Welcome back to the Divine Frequency Online podcast, everyone.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about something today that I think is
Yeah.
incredibly important and touches so many lives.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
depression.
Absolutely. And, we hear about it all the time, but I think it's one of those things that unless you've really gone through it yourself,
Hmm.
you don't really get it.
Yeah, and you've sent in some incredible stories
Yeah.
from your own experiences, and we also have some expert insights from,
Yeah, we have some really great research.
yeah, so I'm really excited to kind of dive into all this with you.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
All
I
right.
think what's so fascinating about this is that we often have like a preconceived notion of what depression looks like.
Right,
Like
like
it
what it looks like from the outside.
exactly, but the reality is so much more
It's-
nuanced than that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where I think like these personal stories are so powerful. Like we heard from Sarah, and she described her experience with depression as like this creeping fog that slowly like isolated her from everything that she loved.
Wow.
And what really struck me was how she talked about losing interest in things that used to light her up.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just like sadness, it was like a loss of her own spark.
Right. And that's a really important distinction, I think, because we think of depression as just being sad all the time.
Yeah.
But it's so much more than that.
It's apathy. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that I think is really interesting is you've shared with me some of Dr. Michael Reyes's work,
Yes.
who is a psychologist. And he actually debunks the myth that depression is simply a chemical imbalance,
Interesting.
which I think a lot of people just sort of assume.
Yeah.
But he emphasizes the psychological and social factors that are at play.
Yeah.
And he even argues that, in some cases, depression can be a natural response to difficult life circumstances, a signal that something needs to change.
Wow. I like that perspective a lot, actually.
Yeah.
It kind of takes the onus off of the individual.
Right. Exactly.
And says, like, maybe this is like an appropriate response to a really difficult situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it takes the pressure off, right?
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
It's not a personal failing.
Yeah.
It's a complex interplay of factors.
I love that.
And I think that can be really freeing for people who are struggling.
I'm sure, for sure. And so, speaking of like
Yeah.
seeking support, I want to talk about James
Okay.
because his story of battling depression in college just like really resonated with me.
Mm-hmm.
He talked about how the stigma surrounding mental health kept him silent for years.
Yeah.
And he shared this really like poignant anecdote about how he would make up excuses to avoid social gatherings,
Wow.
even though he desperately craved connection.
Oh, that's so sad.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And it just shows you how isolating that stigma can be.
Yeah, it really does. And I think it speaks to the importance of, creating spaces where people feel safe to open up.
Totally, totally. And so,
And, James actually
Uh-huh.
eventually found his way to recovery through therapy and a supportive community.
yeah,
And he actually credits finding a therapist who specialized in men's mental health
interesting.
as a turning point in his journey,
Wow.
which I think is really cool because, it's important to find a therapist who really understands your specific needs.
That's such a good point.
And your background and
Totally. And that's like a whole other conversation
it is.
about like finding the right therapist.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But it can make such a difference.
It can.
You're
It
not
can
a-
be life-changing for sure.
Absolutely.
And then there's Maria,
Okay.
who's a single mom
Wow.
who navigated depression
Yeah.
while raising a family and working.
That's amazing.
I'm just like in awe of her strength.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah,
Maria's story is like a testament to resilience.
it is.
And what really stood out to me was her emphasis on self-care,
Yeah.
even in the midst of chaos.
Mm-hmm.
She talked about carving out just 15 minutes each morning for meditation
Wow.
and how that helped her ground herself before facing the day.
That's so important.
Yeah.
It's such a good reminder that self-care isn't selfish.
No,
It's essential,
it's essential.
especially for people who are juggling so much.
Absolutely.
And she also highlighted the importance of medication in her recovery.
Yeah.
It wasn't a cure-all,
Right.
but it gave her the space she needed
Yeah,
to start working on other aspects of her well-being.
exactly.
Yeah. And, it's just a reminder that there are multiple pathways to healing.
Absolutely.
And what works for one person
Mhm.
might not work for another.
Right.
It's about finding what works for you.
Exactly.
And, speaking of resources for those listening who might be searching for support or information,
Yeah.
I highly recommend checking out etherealenergeticvibes.com.
That's a great resource.
Yeah, they have like a ton of information on everything from finding a therapist to managing daily stress.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I think it's really important to address the stigma
absolutely.
surrounding mental health.
Yeah.
Because that's like a huge barrier for so many people.
It is. It is. And societal attitudes, especially in certain cultures,
Mm.
can make it incredibly difficult to even admit you're struggling,
Right.
let alone seek help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So how do we break down these walls?
That's a great question.
What advice would you give to someone who's like struggling but terrified to reach out?
Well, I think it starts with small steps. Talking to a trusted friend or family member can be a good first step.
Okay.
Even sharing your experience anonymously online
Mm.
can help break down that sense of isolation,
Right.
And remember, choosing the right therapist is crucial.
Yes.
Don't be afraid to shop around until you find someone you feel truly comfortable with.
That's such great advice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's important to acknowledge that sometimes, even with the best support system,
Right.
professional help is necessary.
Absolutely.
It's not a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
It's a sign of strength and self-awareness.
It is. It is. And it's about equipping yourself
Yeah.
with the tools to navigate those challenging emotions.
Mm-hmm.
It's like learning a new skill,
Yeah.
It takes time and practice, but it's so worth it.
It is so worth it. And there are things that we can do
Yes.
on a daily basis to cultivate
Yeah,
mental wellness.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like tending to a garden.
I love that analogy.
Yeah, we need to nourish ourselves
Yeah.
with things that bring us joy and help us thrive.
Absolutely. And simple habits
Yeah.
like getting enough sleep,
Yeah.
moving your body,
Yeah.
spending time in nature can have a profound impact on your mood and energy levels.
They really can.
Yeah.
And you mentioned mindfulness and meditation earlier.
Yeah.
Have you found those to be helpful in your own life?
Oh my gosh, yes. Mindfulness has been like a game changer for me.
Really?
Yeah, it's about
What is it about it that's so helpful?
learning to observe your thoughts and feelings without judgment,
Okay.
which creates a sense of space and calm.
It's almost like hitting the pause button on your internal dialogue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
And that pause button can be so valuable when you're feeling overwhelmed,
It really can. And, another like crucial element of recovery, I think, is building a supportive community.
Absolutely.
Surrounding yourself with people who uplift and encourage you can make all the difference.
And it really can.
And remember, recovery isn't a linear journey.
No.
There will be setbacks,
No.
but every step forward,
Yeah.
no matter how small, is a victory.
And don't be afraid to celebrate those victories.
Yes.
Even something as simple as getting out of bed on a tough day is worth acknowledging.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for anyone feeling lost or alone in their struggle,
Yeah.
please remember that you are not alone. Reach out to a trusted friend, family member,
Yeah.
or mental health professional.
Absolutely.
And if you're looking for more resources and information, remember to visit etherealenergeticvibes.com.
That's a great resource.
Yeah, they have a wealth of information to support you on your journey.
And I think it's important to remember
Yeah.
that sharing our experiences can
Yeah.
be incredibly healing,
Yeah.
both for ourselves and for others.
It creates a sense of connection and understanding,
Absolutely.
reminding us that we're all in this together.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for listening to the Divine Frequency Online podcast.
It was my pleasure.
We hope this episode has brought you some hope and encouragement and practical guidance.
Yeah.
And remember, etherealenergeticvibes.com is a great resource for anyone seeking more information and support.
Absolutely.
Thanks again for tuning in.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
I'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.